not going to use a mic. Obviously, if you can't hear me right now, then you're probably covering your ears. My name is Craig. I live in Tampa, Florida. I'm a senior iOS engineer currently for a company called Adept Mobile. We're based in Massachusetts. Most of my background or my work with Adept is working on NFL apps, NBA apps for the actual teams. I don't work with the NBA, the organization itself, for the NFL, so each individual team basically will call us, usually the ones that are tired of the cookie cutter stuff they get. They come to us and they want us to build their experience. So we work with about, I would say, 1/3 of the league, and as far as the NFL goes, we have hockey as well, and NBA, a couple of teams there. We also do Boston Symphony Orchestra and some other apps. So, but primarily everything that I do is sports related, which is what I like. I enjoy it. I'm also currently in the process of writing a book. So I was up till about 2 a.m. last night working on these slides and getting this prepared because I've literally had no time to get my book written and published by, I guess, December, November is when they want to publish. So, being that I'm after the accessibility guy and all of these rules I probably have broken, please don't judge. I put the slides already in Slack, so if you want to download them, you can download them now. And I also have the demo is up there in Slack, so you can pull that down and look through it. And I'm going to kind of go through most of it, but if you need to see anything, you can do. You can see it on your computer versus trying to see it on the screen. So this is where you can get the slides and demo if you aren't on Slack right now. There's the URL for Bitly. It's all up on GitHub. And if you need anything or want anything else, just send me a message on Slack and I'll try to add it if I have time. As John said, this is a part 1 kind of and a part 2. So most of the stuff that I'm going to tell you about is how to actually build it, create it, what it is, all of that good stuff, how I'm going to use it. And then in the next talk, he's going to probably go into more detail on how you can use it, using Sphero and Spark, the little rolly guy. I'm sure BB-8 can also be used with it, but that's the basic concept of Swift Playgrounds and how today's talks will go. So I know we have lunch next, so I'm trying to make sure that I don't run over or do anything like that, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So the agenda today basically is we're going to talk about what Playground Books is. Most people may know it, some people may not. Whenever I say I'm going to do something on Swift Playgrounds, they automatically assume I mean Xcode. This talk is basically on the one that's on the iPad, not on Xcode. So we'll go over what that is. We'll also talk in regards to why Swift Playgrounds is important on the iPad and why it's important to you and for other people who are trying to get into this business of being an iOS developer engineer. I'll go over how you can get started creating your own book and how you can actually publish or put one into your iPad or in other people's iPads. And then finally, we will just kind of review everything that we did throughout, everything I talked about today. So, so what is Swift Playgrounds? How many saw the announcement and know what Swift Playgrounds is by show of hands? Awesome. So there's a few that don't. I didn't want to assume, so we're going to go over it. If you already know this, bear with me. But Swift Playgrounds basically is a coding environment that gives kids and adults the ability to learn code in a visual way without having to actually have a Mac. It definitely lowers the bar for kids who have lower incomes and that can't afford a Mac. So this really gives people the ability that can sit here and just learn Swift, an actual programming language, and not have to own or build or make an app to do so. I was at DubDub when this was announced, and literally right before they said it, I said it to the guy next to me and he laughed, and I'm really glad they actually did, because for me, I am self-taught. I didn't go to school, I don't have a computer science degree. more power to you if you did. I'm sorry you have that every year, whatever month you guys to pay your school back in student loans. So unfortunately, I was in the realm of learning how to do Objective-C on my own. Literally no one was around at the time in 2010 when there wasn't as many resources out there. So literally hacking away at Objective-C was probably the most painful thing, and most of you probably understand what I'm referring to if you've done Objective-C. So from that, I decided that once I got past that stage, I would help others because I remember how painful it was. So most of my time, when I have time, I help others get started in iOS. I mentor as much as possible. And I feel that my opinion on it is, as a developer, everyone in here started as a beginner. No one just came out and was like, I know Objective-C, Swift, and every other programming language. So there's at a point where you have someone that helped you, at least at one point. So my thought is that everyone should mentor at least 30 minutes a month, 30 minutes for like 1 month for the entire year. Someone, it doesn't matter who it is, but spend 30 minutes of your time just helping someone. If it's a lunch, if it's coffee, if it's more, great. But you helping someone, especially who they don't have that resource, helps them be able to learn, and then they give back. And then that grows the community. Right now, we're not very diverse. A lot of it is more white male and Asian. Where I don't see myself in a lot of businesses at all. I don't see a lot of African Americans. I don't see a lot of African American women or women in general that are programmers. So most of my time is spent working with them, not because I'm prejudiced or anything, but it's just to help them because one, usually they don't have money. Single moms don't have the money or the resources, so I always help them. Then they always want to help their kids, so I always do something together. So when Swift Playgrounds came out, this was the avenue for me to be able to give something to someone, and then I can go do something else. They can go through my entire work, or my entire book, and then they have questions, they can come back to me, and I can at least give feedback and check their code within Swift Playgrounds and never have to be on them 24/7. So this is the reason why Swift Playgrounds is great for me. And like I said, I'll show you some of the things that I'm doing. So again, this is what the screen looks like. This is another screen for Swift Playgrounds. It's just an interactive guy who moves around, collects gems, and as you're working through it, you're actually building code and you're learning actual Swift instead of learning Stanford's, I think it's Harvard or Stanford's code, which is not really code, it's pseudocode, so you're not really learning anything. So this is an actual platform for people to learn actual programming and not the other stuff like Java and Python. So, why Swift Playgrounds is important? I kind of covered that already. For me, it's the learning tools that I can give to other people. And so what I had in mind for my own self as far as how I wanted to teach was I wanted 2 types of books. One that was for someone I was mentoring, and one that was for kids. It's great that Apple has theirs, but I have no control over content. I have no control over how I speak to someone. Everyone doesn't learn the same, so if I speak to one person I'm working with, it's not going to click with somebody else at times. So if I know that, then I can cater my language in my book for that person. And that's what's great about having Swift Playgrounds and having more control. So here is a basic example of what a playground for kids would look like in one that I'm working on now. So unfortunately it's a little dark, but this is just basically a 2D scene where there's a character and some other stuff is going to happen. Basically the same concept that Apple's doing, but in an environment that I can work with and do, and not in 3D since I'm not a 3D person. But this right here lets me create almost identical to what Apple's doing, but I have control over it. Eventually I will move to an isometric, which will be more like Apple, but for the first iteration I'm going to do, it'll be flat 2D. For my mentoring, it'll look a little bit more like this. So I'm going to have this guy with a big old head in the screen, and he's basically going to talk back and forth and communicate. So as you enter your code, his facial expressions will basically dictate what you do or what you don't. So in this example, we have an introduction on loops, and when Sarah decides to enter something wrong, he goes, sorry, that's incorrect, with the sad face. Once she gets the actual question right, too bad that slide's gone. So, so there's a third slide. There it is. Okay, so I skipped it on accident. So here now I'm able to give visual feedback with text to the user and actually personalize it with Sarah's name in the app versus just some generic text. All right. So these are some of the things that I'm working on as far as personally. Again, in the next talk, he's going to cover some other stuff that you can do with Swift Playgrounds, but this is how I envision using it and how I'm working on using it. So the thing we'll look at is the structure. The books are actually really easy. You can just go into your folder or any folder on your Mac and just right-click and create. That's the simplest way. And the way that I would prefer doing it, just because then I learn the structure, I know where everything is, I know how to pull things out and pull it in. But it's really just a file structure. So looking at it here, this is just a brief snippet of what it is. It's basically a folder with chapters. We have each chapter inside of your chapters folder has another folder with a plist, has pages, and then each page has its own thing with contents and manifest. So this entire structure is all within the demo that I put online. You can just right-click, bring it to your desktop, right-click and say show content, or you can just drag it right into Xcode and you can see the file structure there. So the file structure is pretty simple. If you're going to create these folders in Finder, all you have to do is just right-click and then just say chapter1.playground chapter, and then Xcode will, Mac will automatically know what it is, and that's basically all. It's really just folders and files. So let's look a little bit closer at the manifest files. They basically drive everything. They are plist, so if you're familiar with plist, they're very simple. So we'll look at the first one. So you have a manifest file for the entire book. And in this book, it just basically gives an overview of the chapter so it knows. And it uses that to display inside of Swift Playgrounds. The next thing you're going to see inside of here is you're going to see a manifest for each chapter. So every chapter will have its own manifest. And within there, you're going to give it the pages that you're going to put in there. Again, very simple. All it is just plist. Finally, or secondly, you'll have cutscenes and the manifest for this. I will explain cutscenes in a minute, but this is basically just intros when you want to do intros for your stuff. But the manifest is pretty simple. Again, just gives a version and that's about it. And then the last type of manifest you'll have is one that's actually specific to a chapter. And then in here, you'll list out all of your individual items. So the playground page manifest is what it's called. But that is basically the what drives your contents, like how you set it up. That's all you have to do. So you can literally take the demo that I gave you, drop it in, and then just change all the plist, and then now you have your playbook and it's done. Okay? So easy, simple. Next step is glossary. So this is another thing that's really great to be able to do, is you can put terms and definitions and things that are important for whatever lesson you're doing. So the user can read your content, and if you cover arrays but you want to make sure you reiterate them or show a definition, you can actually have that in there so the user can just tap on the name and then it'll show the definition. And so this gives you the ability to do things like, for example, if you're doing a playground on design patterns and you want to reference an older design pattern, you can do that as well. That's the kind of thing that glossaries give you the ability to do. So again, We are blessed that this is all, again, in a plist. So we just drop in what we need for our plist references, chapter, and then we can reference in our actual playground with a line of code to just basically reference to this plist, and then it's displayed. This example is in the demo. If you click on Cocoa Academy, it'll pop a little modal over and then just give a simple definition, and that's basically all you have to do. So in playgrounds, if you've most of you have done it or dealt with it before, you've seen most of the comments. Well, in Swift Playground books, they've added a few more for you to be able to write code. So we'll cover the 4 that are primary, or the 3 that are primary. So in playgrounds, you can hide code from people. This is good for when you're not ready for someone to learn something. You can set up your own code and put it in the background and then just show them exactly what you want them to see. So all you have to do is just wrap this comment and that comment and put anything inside of there that you want to hide. That's it. So I'll show you another example of this, but that's basically what you want to do if you want to hide your code. The next comment is code completion. So if somebody taps on something within your playgrounds, they will have the ability to see methods at the bottom of their screen that gives them suggestions. So this helps with being able to lead the user on if they don't quite know what they need to do next. So you can have code completion for them to be able to see, or you just want them to not have to type set up playground page, the entire thing. They can start typing it, they see it at the bottom, they can tap it, and then it's done. So this is where you would add special comments for code completions. And then the third one is editable code. So the user, if you want them to enter something within a function or within a loop or whatever, you're gonna just add this here. The user can tap and they can enter the information, and then from that point you basically check to see whether they entered the right information or not. Okay? So code completion, we briefly touched it just a minute ago, but I'm going to show you a better example of what would happen. So in here, I just created some generic functions at the very top of my file, and I hid them from being seen. For now, just pretend that there's data in here, whatever you're going to run. So the user won't see this, only you. What will happen next is, here, I give them the code completions. I give them a show, create data, and fetch data. But if you notice here, I'm telling them to hide. So if I don't add this, Apple's going to give you some generic stuff like ifs and lets and all kinds of stuff that's going to come into your project. So I'm basically telling it to hide all of that and just show this. And that's all I'm doing. If I want to add more, I just basically add a comma, and I can add more code to code completions to my stuff. Then finally, I have a method that I want them to enter information in, and in here is where I do the editable code in editable code, and then the user will be able to tap there, and once they tap there, the code hints will show up at the bottom. They'll be able to tap it and enter it inside of the function, and that's it. Very simple. If you've done iOS or Swift, then this isn't anything hard that you've already done. It's just adding a comment. So for somebody that you may not have time to actually work with them on, this is great to be able to just throw something together, send it to them, and then they can come back and maybe a week later, 2 weeks later, and then you can kind of go over it again or give them something else. So it really helps with that. We'll look at cutscenes. So the one thing about cutscenes is they are not done in Swift. So if you do not like HTML or JavaScript or any of that kind of stuff like me, this is what you have to write it in. One of the things that I recommend you use is this, and I forgot the URL, so I'll get it to you. But basically, it's a really easy JavaScript CSS where you can write your own intros if you want. So you can kind of build up slides, basically a presentation for the user before they actually enter into the chapters and examples and all of that stuff. And that gives you, and it's structured a little bit differently. One thing you can do, and which is what I did before Apple actually published more doc, is you can take what's on your iPad and bring it to your computer. So you can take the learn code from Apple's Playground, the one they do with the 3D, and you can go through it. It's insanely large and it's a lot of code, but if you look at their cutscenes, it's like JavaScript up the yin yang. So I really don't like JavaScript too much. I found this CSS library that does a lot of this, makes it simple. But if you are familiar with JavaScript, then you can crank these out easily and do them without any problem. And I will post the URL. I don't know why I forgot to put it up there. So let's go through some tips for getting started. So when I first did it, I just basically started creating stuff in the Finder. And what I found out is that that's a little tedious once you get the hang of it, but it is helpful for getting started. So the first thing, which may sound like it's a weird way of doing it, is creating a workspace project first. The reason you create the workspace project is because you're going to want to bring in other playgrounds to be able to write your code. So here I'm going to create a workspace file, and then I'll bring in my book, and then I'll write all my code inside of a playground so that I can actually write and test, because testing and debugging is very hard. So the first thing you need to do is create a workspace. The second thing is you want to create your little playgrounds and do your testing and everything within there, what you normally would use if you've worked with playgrounds. Here you can validate and do everything that you want to do, and then once you're ready, you can actually bring it into your book. Third step would be to basically write and assess and do everything in playgrounds before you're done. So like, do everything, even with the solution, put it in, and then once you have your solution, then remove it. Otherwise, it's going to take you some time trying to go back and forth, and the process of going back and forth is a bit much. So the process of going back and forth basically includes iCloud. A lot of people didn't know you can do this, but you have an iCloud drive on your folder. It links up with your iPad, and there's a folder called Playgrounds. You can go in it, just drop it in, and then it'll appear on your iPad. Another great thing I found out is you can copy code from your Mac and paste it in your Playground, or vice versa. So if you're testing code and you don't want to write it every time, you can just copy it on your Mac and then every time just paste it in and then validate whatever you're trying to validate. And you can do that with anything really. Since that's a new Sierra thing, I don't believe you can do this in previous Mac OSs. So those are some of the tips for getting there. There's a couple of resources. So Ash Furrow was one of the first to create a playbook generator. Again, I wouldn't recommend it if you until you're actually comfortable creating them yourselves and you want to just create something quick. He has a generator, and then I found another one called Playbook Generator, Playground Book Generator also. These two links are out there for resources that you can use through Terminal, and it'll basically create all your file structure and do everything you need without having to do a whole lot. So this is a good resource once you get the hang of it. And that's basically it. I just really wanted to give a rough idea of how Swift Playgrounds can help and maybe motivate some of you to do the same. Because again, mentoring is something that is passionate for me, and helping others is what I like to do. So it's something that I feel like if people know that they have this resource and they may not have a whole lot of time they can spend, maybe one weekend they crank out something and then be able to share it, that's one weekend and that helps one person, two people, how many ever people. But just remember when you first started how it was. I mean, a lot of us don't remember if we've been doing this a while. You forget how hard it was and how you struggled, especially opening Xcode, and you have 90 panels and you touch one thing and this changes and that changes. And beginners, it becomes natural when you're in Xcode, but when you're not, it's really frustrating. I'm working with someone who's a lawyer who's reviewing my book, and I forget little things like curly braces, like I never really explained them. So those are the things that are like, well, what are they and how do they work? And you think, oh, why didn't I think of that? So just little things like that can help someone, and like now this person who's never thought about coding is like really passionate about building an app. And so that makes me feel good to know that just by helping that one person that can change her to now want to build something, and then maybe she influences someone else, and then that builds our community and gives us more diversity and more people to actually write code, because you can learn things. I try to learn things all the time. I know I've learned from him before, his videos on YouTube, and there's probably other people in here that have blog posts or something that I've learned from that's helped me. So this is my way of giving back. Anybody have questions, comments, concerns? I was not loud enough, I was too loud, whatever. Yes?
First of all, I learned from you yesterday about the unwinding segue, so thanks for it.
Got it, man.
Once you create these playground books, how can you share it?
Yeah, so that's the thing that Apple hasn't really addressed. So right now it's basically just throw it on GitHub or Dropbox, or depending on who you're giving it to, but that's really the only resource we have. So as of right now, that's, I would say, the best way.
Sorry if I missed this during your presentation,
No
but
problem.
is your book a playground book?
Yes.
Or is your book a printed book?
No, okay, so there's two books. This is Swift Playgrounds. The book I'm writing is an actual book, and that's something for a different publisher. But this is something more along the lines of once the new year hits, I'll be doing more and more and I'll be blogging and associating Swift Playground books with my blogs. So people who don't have Macs can still work on my stuff.
So my second question is Swift Playgrounds on the iPad limited to a certain class of iPads? I thought I remembered hearing that. Or
iOS 10 only, and then whatever iOS 10 is supported on which devices you can use. So I believe like the second Pad I generations you can't use, but everything above that I believe you can.
So this is out.
I don't know which version that is, but
Yeah, I can't upgrade this to iOS 10.
yeah, then that means you won't be able to use it.
We'll just throw it out.
I have talked to people online. I talked to one guy in general. He said his 8-year-old codes, and he went through the steps with her, I think, for a day or so, and now she does it on her own. So if you think that this isn't helping or like people aren't learning, especially kids, to me, I'd rather have a kid learn real programming rather than pseudo, because like pseudo is great, they learn it, but then they have to learn a whole new language. At Dub, if you went, there was an 8-year-old from, I believe, Australia who was walking around like a rock star. And the funny thing is she wanted pictures of the engineers, and the engineers wanted pictures of her. And she had, I think, like 3 or 4 apps in the store. And I took a picture. I was talking to an engineer, and like they all jumped up and started taking a picture with her. And I took a picture of that. And I thought it was really awesome. But that 8-year-old's going to inspire other kids who are going to want to code. And I mean, I've mentored teenagers and kids of younger age, so this is a great way to get kids programming and learning. Some of them aren't very social, so this is a kind of a good way for me to communicate. I know one kid, he would not say a word. He went to my meetups, nothing. After 2 years, we have full conversations. It's mostly about basketball because I figured out what he really, really likes besides code. So I try to get him to do that, and then he kind of talks about other things as well. So again, Swift Playgrounds is really good and useful if you haven't gotten that hint yet. Anybody else have any questions? Yes?
If I create a Swift Playgrounds book, they can open it on the Mac? Or?
Yep, it's just folders, that's all it is. And so you can just right click and then show package contents. So some of the stuff you do for Playgrounds won't be compatible with the Xcode version of Swift Playgrounds. So you have to just remember that, and you'll start to learn which comments you can use and which ones you can't.
Are there any limitations on the code that you can actually write in there? Like, could you use AF networking to make network calls and do stuff like that?
Yes, so I didn't go over it in detail, but you can have source files. There are certain supported frameworks, I think like 30 to 40. So as long as AF networking uses one of those frameworks and not something they don't support, you can bring it into your project. One thing you have to do is turn everything public that you need access to. Otherwise, it's not going to know that that class exists in your folder structure. And that's something that took me a little time to get and understand. One thing I've been struggling with is getting files to show, because the path is like this path, but it's giving me more issues than I want. But I'm getting through them and able to work things out and learn. But as far as like files, you really are just limited to the frameworks that are being used. And as long as I believe they'll start adding more, but there's a good amount. Most of them are in there. I would stay away from doing anything online anyways, just because somebody trying to learn may not have on internet. So, trying to keep away from it, especially iPads, since iPads usually either have the AT&T or Sprint like networking, or they have Wi-Fi, so it's kind of hard. Some people may not be in the area to use it. But.
It's not the real specific my situation, but I know at least one other person has this problem for the playgrounds folder. That's for the iPad doesn't appear on their Mac at all, and so you can't sync your playground books. Have you encountered that at all?
No, not. The hardest part has been just going back and forth. And so using Workspace and using Playgrounds, but you're going to get to that point where you're going to sit there dragging and dropping and then reloading and then just testing. But I haven't had any problems. They're just folder structures. Maybe at the beginning it was like that, but I haven't seen it since I've been working on it. Okay. Let me know if you have a problem, if you're here, and I'll look at it. Anyone else? Everyone wants lunch? It's almost 11:45, so thank you very much. I appreciate you guys hearing me out, even though you're stuck in the room, can't really go anywhere, but thank you.